I have a story for you today. We're going to call my client Jay. And Jay is my 32-year-old female athlete who likes to do some strength training and some endurance work. She trains about 5 days a week. She's got 2 very long sessions on the weekends and shorter intervals and strength work throughout the course of the week. When Jay met me, she was consuming about 2,300 to 2,400 calories per day and 150 grams of protein. And on paper, this was pretty solid. You know, she was performing reasonably okay, and she looked like she was in great shape. Even before she met me, Jay already tracked her food pretty meticulously. She kept her calories tight, those are her words. She prioritized protein at every single meal, hence the very high protein intake. However, there were some glaring issues. She said, and I quote, "I don't know what's happening, but I can't stop eating after my training sessions like an animal. I literally just face plant into my food. I also have to consume an insane amount of caffeine to feel awake for my training, and it's getting out of hand." Yikes. So I had her collect some data, and after 13 days, we were able to identify some classic restrictive athlete patterns. That is mentally restrictive, and that's the important distinction that I want to make here, because she is technically not physically restricting that much. So first, after her harder sessions, especially anything over 60 minutes or involving really high intensity intervals, she would come home with the intention of eating something clean, again her words, because it's what she thought that she was supposed to do. So that would be Greek yogurt, maybe a protein shake with water, ew, sometimes eggs. If you like protein shake with water, that's fine. I'm not poo-pooing on it, but it's just not for me. Sometimes she would make eggs cooked in like very minimal butter. And then what would follow was almost the same sequence. The meal doesn't land at all, and within an hour, she was back in the kitchen. And again, and again, and again, she was raiding the pantry, she was raiding the fridge, and then by the end of the night, she had described feeling out of control, and she was like cycling through cereal, nut butter, frozen waffles, whatever was available, and then she would eventually get up to that 2,400 calorie target. We also found that her pre-training fuel was abysmal, no offense, Jay. It was often just a coffee, a black coffee, or a protein bar, because she thought that more protein equals better. And this would result in her post-training meals to be disproportionately high protein and high fat, with carbohydrates either still minimized or even further delayed, and it made her stomach feel terrible. As I mentioned, her intake was technically within like a reasonable calorie range for her activities, but it was so poorly distributed relative to demand. And by the way, her idea of reasonable was slightly above a minimum of 2,000, and we are currently actively working on getting her closer to like 2,600 so that she can stop just like barely scraping by, because who wants to barely scrape by? And fourth, she carried a rule that carbohydrates needed to be earned. And because of this rule, she was undercarbing on non-training days because she had the belief that she didn't need carbs at all when she wasn't working out within like a 12-hour window. And this constant delaying of carbs amplified the carbs' perceived reward value. So when she finally allowed herself to have carbs, the experience of that was not like a neutral consumption. It was a very heightened, almost urgent interaction with food. Fast forward of working together across 5 months with me, thank you very much, and Jay said the following: "Not only have I made some major PRs in the last 2 months, but I feel more at peace with my diet more than ever. I can't believe what a difference adding in carbohydrates at the right time has made. Obviously, I had to do a lot of work on my relationship with food, but it's already making an immediate positive impact on my training performance." And guess what? Her body composition has stayed the same. So here's how we got to present day. Number one is we immediately corrected for carb distribution. This was definitely like the biggest, easiest lever to pull, carb distribution. So after any even moderate or high intensity session, I would have her consume a very meaningful carbohydrate source alongside protein within the hour of training. Sure, this benefits muscular gains or whatever, but more importantly for us, it just made her feel better. And it also allowed her to have more energy for the rest of the day. For a long time, this within hour consumption was highly, highly encouraged, almost to the point of being somewhat not optional or dependent on how hard the workout felt, because we wanted to build a lot of psychological safety around continuing this carb within an hour. The carb component directly addressed glycogen depletion and also reduced the lingering drive for fast energy later in the day. Secondly, we front-loaded more calories overall calories, so not just carbs. And we front loaded more calories earlier in the day. And as a result of front loading, let's say before like 2 p.m., she would not feel the need to eat so much in the evening. We did 3 larger meals before 4 p.m. One of those would be before training, another one would be after training. Having her meals structured this way, by the way, I call these anchor meals. I've said this a million times by now, but structuring her meals as anchors reduced the cumulative energy deficit that had been building across the day that had been contributing to nighttime eating. If you've never heard about this, this is called a within day deficit, and it does have real downstream effects on how you feel. Number 3, we removed the moral hierarchy around carb timing. So this relates to this carb distribution. So carbohydrates were no longer positioned as something that had to be earned or delayed, and by allowing them earlier and more consistently, the psychological charge of carbohydrates decreased. And of course, this reduced the reward amplification that had previously been driving that overeating after training sessions. The last one is actually building a post-training eating ritual with pre-selected food choices. Pre-selected is the key word here. Typically after training sessions, there's a lot of like mental fatigue that has accumulated. And when you have a lot of mental fatigue, it is much harder to make decisions that are aligned with your interests in the moment. So for a very long time, we were pre-selecting these foods and these meals, and I was making sure that she had them available to her in her fridge or in her pantry or even already prepared. A little bonus thing for you guys, I'm just gonna add this on the side over here, sodium. So we addressed her sodium intake. This might only apply to some of you, especially if you do endurance training, maybe less so for strength training athletes, depending on how intensely you train. But essentially, Jay found that using an occasional electrolyte supplement on her longer endurance days helped with her feeling more at ease afterwards. She noticed that she was particularly hungry on those longer training days and she wanted salty foods, which makes sense because you're losing a lot of salt and you're losing a lot of water. The easiest way to combat this is to just be a little bit more proactive with your sodium replenishment. By no means do you even have to spend money on an electrolyte supplement. You can buy some Gatorade with sugar, or you can sip some salty water, or you can eat something salty. It is totally up to you. So by doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, we were able to get Jay into a better place with her training, but then also, as I say, most importantly, a better place with her mental health when it comes to eating and diet and her relationship with food. If you need help with understanding your relationship with food and you want help with dismantling your own carbohydrate hierarchy and your general food choices, I want you to check out Food Freedom Foundations, which is coming out in July 2026. I built this paid 6-week self-led course specifically for athletes and people to free themselves of the mental anguish that follows, eating pastries and ice creams and pastas and the like. Remember that if you can free your headspace, you are that much more likely to actually hit your body composition goals and your training goals because you'll be a happier human. And that is the most important thing that I care about. You deserve to be a happy, well-fed athlete and hit all of your goals. All right, I hope this was helpful. If it was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. I have a teeny tiny YouTube channel and I would love to grow it, so make sure you show a little bit of support somewhere. And if you want more free content, you can leave your email in the newsletter link below. I'll catch you in the next one.